Now, you're very welcome back. It's just gone 10:36, and as I was saying, we're going to start a series of interviews with the presidential candidates to try and take a look not at the areas that they've been faced with since they started running for election. Very often people have been cornered on one particular issue, and it seems it's just that issue and nothing else they get to talk about. So we want to try and look beyond that and see more of a fleshed out portrait of the person and all their interests and family and personal life and private life and just how they live their lives and what they do. What better place to start than Senator Norris, who sits in front of me this morning. Senator Norris, good morning, and you're very welcome.
It's lovely to be back here in News Talk, and I saw Sue, my producer, out there, who got me a nice cup of coffee. And the last time we met, Tom, was in Bewley's in Grafton Street.
This is true,
yes.
And you were just thinking, you were just putting your name forward. It was starting to be on your agenda that you wanted to do this.
That's right.
And
yes.
Since then, I think you've probably had the harshest time.
Yes, I have. It's been a roller coaster, but I've shown that I'm able to cope with it with dignity. And I think that's very important in a president, to have the issues, but also to have the dignity. And I think I've shown that, and that I've shown that I can face difficult times. And I said at the beginning, I would not make any derogatory comments about any of the other candidates, and I won't. But every single issue that they raise, like the Constitution, I'm the only one who's actually used the Constitution to assert the rights of an excluded group in this society.
Absolutely.
Did it successfully.
Yeah.
With regard to poetry, yes, even I have written and published poetry. I had a play produced in the Tive Jock in Galway. It went around all the lovely provincial theatres and ended up in the Theatre Festival in Dublin. In terms of business, I started and ran 2 successful businesses, and as chairman of the board, I never took a single penny. But they gave employment, and particularly during the last big recession. So I've actually acted. I've actually done it.
You've led a fascinating life, at the very least.
I have, yes. I've been very lucky. I've never been bored.
No, and people say it's a Chinese curse to live in interesting times. But you certainly have lived through interesting times.
Yes, and I have to say I've enjoyed it. I've thoroughly enjoyed this campaign. Yeah. There were painful moments. I mean, when you open newspapers and you see things that are direct and blatant lies printed on the front page, it is very hurtful. But you live with that because you realise that the people on the street know me better than the headline writers.
This is what it's all going to hinge on, isn't it? So,
it is.
Are
it's
you
going
still
to be the
optimistic at the moment? Because the polls are very up and down, aren't they?
Polls are, but can I tell you, I'm an honest person. I always have been. And you remember, I got 6 positive polls in a row. In some of them, I was actually in the lead. And I was asked about those, and I said, when a politician is confronted with a bad poll, he says it's just a snapshot. I've had 6 positive ones. I'm telling you, that's just a snapshot.
Okay.
At the moment, the polls are not good for me. 11%, then it went up to 14. So I'm actually on the increase again.
Right. Trending upwards, we hope.
Trending upwards, yes. Right. And I'm going to maximise that as much as I can.
Can I bring you back to little bits of your life that we want to kind of fill in? Because, as I said, you have led a fascinating life. Yes. And even the very beginning of your life is fascinating. You're born into the Belgium Congo during World War II.
Yes.
Well, your dad is quite the man, isn't he?
Well, my father was a war hero in the First World War. He was an inventor and an engineer. And he got the Marine VC for bringing in HMS Sceptre single-handedly.
There aren't many of them going around, are there, Marine
No, there aren't.
VCs?
Apparently it's a very rare medal. I showed it to somebody and he was very impressed. But I can't take credit for that. In fact, I always say I'm an SRC, a state-registered coward.
I have to say, it's a colourful start to a life.
It is, but my father died when I was 6, and he was in Africa most of that time. I only saw him 3 times. So I was brought up by 3 wonderful women. My mother, my grandmother, who read me Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, and explained the French Revolution and how the people with privilege betrayed the people, the decent, ordinary people like everybody else, like us. And that's always been a theme of my life. The people who are excluded and marginalised. And I remember hearing several times when I was young the phrase, oh, it's very sad, but I can't afford to be involved. And I always said, well, I will get involved. And that's why I've continually been saying for the last 3.5 years the government has been mistaken because they put the preservation of the system and the interest of the establishment above the welfare of the people. For good government, the welfare of the people should come first.
Right. You came back to Ireland.
Yes.
Your dad was still alive when you came back
Yes,
to Ireland.
absolutely. And by the way, I do have an Irish passport. Somebody has asked that in newspapers.
Yes.
I am an Irish citizen. I've always been an Irish citizen.
Right.
It is the best passport you can have because
Absolutely.
we've offended nobody.
It's only one of the few passports that's greeted in a friendly face wherever you go.
We've had no colonies.
What was school like for you? You went to Andrews and high school?
I didn't like it. I liked it in the beginning, in the junior school, with Miss Slater, who was the most wonderful teacher. But when my father died, I was a boarder, and I was only 7.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult, and there was a huge amount of bullying. I mean, really, really severe physical, corporal punishment. And some of the teachers were very sadistic.
Had you anywhere to turn to when this was happening?
I had myself to turn to, and I turned to myself, and I rebelled, and I insisted on extricating myself, and I went to the high school in Harcourt Street.
Right.
Now, Belvedere, at the top of my street, my beloved North Great George Street, gave to the world James Joyce. But high school gave
That's the only mention you're allowed to make of that man.
But I can mention one of his characters.
All right, you may.
Because high school gave us W.B. Yeats, and also Leopold Bloom from Ulysses went to high school. So that was rather nice.
Okay.
And I loved that school.
And that school worked for you? That was good?
Yes, because the teachers loved their teaching, and they were prepared to give extra, just like Brenda Kennelly when I went to Trinity. Brenda was one of these people who, somebody with a small spark of talent, he would fan it into flame. I've seen other people show how clever they were by extinguishing that little spark.
Yeah, such a gift.
It is.
So you managed to survive this. Life improves. There's certain things. You lived in a household that was quiet. Your mum was a great chef as well, I believe.
My mother was finished, as they said in those days, in Alexandra College for Young Ladies, and she learned cooking and all kinds of stuff there. But when she was in Africa, her 2 recreations were teaching her the outer extremes of French haute cuisine. She was a superb cook. She taught herself all the local languages and made little grammars and vocabularies and so on, so she could speak about 6 African languages. And she also collected wild animals. She was friendly with Sir Julian Huxley in the London Zoo.
This is all very enriching for you to be around, isn't it?
It is, because one of the things I have at home is my mother brought home, in those days you travelled with cases and boxes and hat boxes and so on quite luxurious boats to and from Africa. And she brought back in her stateroom some of these animals. And I have a photograph of the first Herman's Potto in captivity, which is a little small thing like a teddy bear sitting in the zookeeper's hat in London. It appeared on the front page of the London Evening Standard in 1936.
These sound like they're tales that should be from 150 years ago.
My father was born in Richmond in Surrey, which was then a little village outside London, a rather nice village, in 1895. And his birthday was the 11th of November, Armistice Day, and also the day of the inauguration of the next president of Ireland. So that's maybe an omen.
So to take you into Trinity College as a student, but that was the 60s time.
That was the 60s.
I would have thought modern culture in the Beatles and the Stones and all kind of... Did that make any impression on you at all?
You bet it did. But I want to come out of my hands up. I didn't think much of the Beatles at all.
Right.
I was a Stones man.
All right.
I went to the Adelphi in Abbey Street, and I saw Mick Jagger in the flesh, and the song of the moment was "It's All Over Now," because I used to love her, but it's all over now. When he sang that last phrase, he used to skip into the air, clap his hands, and he could, like a ballet dancer, he could be halfway in midair and click his heels. It was real showbiz.
Right.
But we had Marlene Dietrich, I saw Louis Armstrong, I saw all these great artists. They came to Dublin.
You're living the life, may I say, at this point.
In the cheap seats.
I have to take a quick break. We'll be back with more from Senator Norris after this.
Foot.
I'm not overweight. I've just got big bones.
But the fact is, for most of us, regardless of height, age or bone size, excess fat around your middle means that you're probably overweight. And no matter what you say, that puts you at a higher risk of heart disease, cancer and diabetes. Find out how to stop the spread at safefood.eu. Safe Food. Be safe, be healthy, be well.
Mortgage holders, if you're concerned by rising mortgage repayments, InsureSafe.ie can now help you search for a better deal and save money on your mortgage protection costs. InsureSafe.ie is helping mortgage holders reduce protection costs by up to 20% or more. We do our best to help mortgage holders reduce protection costs and save money. Call 1850-829-829. That's 1850-829-829 or visit InsureSafe.ie. Irish Mortgage Corporation Limited, trading as InsureSafe.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
They've captured the hearts of millions. Now, Il Divo are coming to Dublin for one night only on April 5th at the O2. Tickets from $49.65, including booking fee, limited to 6 per person, on sale this Friday, October 14th.
It's just gone 10:48. Our guest in studio this morning is Senator David Norris. Before I ask you about being gay in the 60s and the 70s, when I was going to say to you that I wouldn't recognise that Ireland, because back then it was a criminal offence to be homosexual. Now it isn't, and that's the Ireland I know.
It was also a criminal offence to have a contraceptive. And Mary Robinson, who took my case, took that case for Mrs. McGee. We used the Constitution.
I find it very hard to
Maureen de Burke took the case where women were regarded as such second-class citizens that they weren't allowed to serve on juries. I mean, that's only 30 years ago.
It's incredible. I think that that's happening in Ireland at the same time that the world is blossoming in London.
I dealt with people who had been forcibly subjected to electroconvulsant therapy simply because they were gay, and their lives were wrecked. They were wreckage. And to move on now, where we see public personalities in the world of broadcasting, entertainment, the arts business, sports, coming out and actually entering civil partnerships. And I produced the first civil partnership bill 5 or 6 years ago and really put the needle into the government to produce the bill they finally did.
It's an incredible journey in a very short time. And I think of the film Milk in San Francisco.
I never met him. I only spoke to him once on the telephone.
Same thing.
Can I tell you, I arrived in New York to do research on the case, and I was to be met by officials from the office of the borough president of Manhattan. There's nobody at the airport. So I rang, and I heard screaming in the office. That was the time, that was the very moment that Harvey Milk, the announcement of his shooting, had been made.
My God.
So I connect with that. I spoke to Harvey Milk once over the telephone to, I think, San Francisco.
What was it like for you to be a gay man in Ireland at that point?
Well, it wasn't that much fun because, I mean, it was absolutely smothered. You didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody who was gay even in Trinity. You know, it's unbelievable. I was in my mid-20s before I consciously met another gay man. But let's get on to Lily. Because you mentioned Lily Huber.
You're a piano teacher. Yes. This is only you could produce a connection like this.
Yeah, well, I went to the Reed Pianoforte School. It's where Kennedy's art shop is. It occupied the floors above that. And Lily Huben was my teacher. She was absolutely wonderful. I adored her. She had been the demonstration pupil of Alfred Cortot in the Conservatoire in Paris in the 1920s. He was a pupil of Leschetizky, who was a pupil of Frédéric Chopin. So I was taught the nocturnes of Chopin in a garage in Harker Street by a pupil of a pupil of a pupil of Chopin, who had been there in Paris in the word of Les Six, Jean Cocteau, André Gide. I got as much education from Lily as I got from school.
There's one question. As you put that to me, I'm thinking it's so unique to you. There is a question which I think is quite telling for that. I cannot imagine a life more different to mine. How does that experience qualify you to be our president?
Well, I think the variety. I think the fact that I've been on the outside. Some people think I've got a life of privilege. And in some ways I have, but it's largely by lateral thinking. I didn't inherit a lot of money. I bought the house in North Great Georgia Street for $25,000. A judgment was given against me in the High Courts soon after that, $75,000 costs against me to the government. That was 3 times the price of my house. And I know what it's like to have a mortgage and have the interest rate 21.5% and to be afraid to pay, to open the post. Yes. But we had a community, and we still have a community in North Great Georgia Street, and that, I think, is the great thing. So I think all these experiences qualify me to be president. And the other thing is, I think they're all excellent candidates, we have a government that is trying to address the situation, but the government, they control the councils, they control the Senate, which they may or may not abolish, they control the Dáil, automatically and rightly, they control the Army, Navy, and Air Force and police. They've also got the banks, which I was one of a handful of people who voted against this foolish blanket guarantee. And then if they get Horace Nuth thrown as well, they have everything. And that's dangerous even for good people. And I have good relations with all parties. But I think that is why it's very important to have a fearless, independent voice who tells the truth even when it's to his own disadvantage. I've never engaged in the comfortable half-truths or the downright lies that other people have, even though I have been lied about.
That thing, though, we brought you in, the other side of you, the things we don't see. I mean, if we take Joyce out of the equation...
Yes. Well, take Joyce out of it and put in religion, because Joyce was a very spiritual man.
Yeah.
And I think people don't realise, I mean, I'm wearing the St. Bridget's cross because during the penal period, my family, who'd been my mother's family, were the McGill Paulsrigs, Fitzpatrick's of Ossory, and they'd become Anglican. But one of their close kinsmen was orphaned. He was in the Catholic branch of the family. At the height of the penal laws, they brought him up as Roman Catholic, even though it was not their religion, because they wanted to honour his parents' desire. They sent him to Paris. He became a priest. He became a famous bishop during the penal period. Now, they could have suffered severe penalty for breaking the penal laws in doing that, but he founded the Brigidines, the nuns, and he founded the Patrician Brothers. And I'm very proud of that. My grandfather inherited his rosary beads because it shows the goodness of people in taking a risk to help the people
That's the
around
thing
the
that comes
margins.
across from people texting us when they meet
Yes.
you. They're very taken by your warmth. How do you relate to them when you're out in Galway or Cork?
I love it.
What do
That's
you
the best part
What do you
of the
talk to them
campaign.
about? What do they talk to you about?
Well, they talk to me about their lives. They talk to me about the things we have in common. And
Which
we
are?
discover each other. Well, for example, the fact that, like a very large number of people in Dublin, my roots are in the country. You know, they're actually in the bog. And I love the bog. We used to go back down to Laois, and at a certain point on what was then the Limerick Road, because we went on a bus, because after my father died we didn't have a car, you start to smell the turf smoke. And I'd know I was coming home. And I still feel at home there in the foothills of the Slieve Bloom Mountains, where I stay in a little house, which is now a country house hotel that was built by an ancestor of mine, Anthony Sharp, who was a friend. He was a Quaker, and he was a friend of William Penn. He went to Pennsylvania with Penn. Penn was a huge success. Poor old Anthony was a total flop.
What a pity.
But he came back, and he started growing sheep. He was quite humble. The Quakers are humble people and good people. And he was very successful. He had a wool carding business from the wool from the sheep up in Dublin. And he's in the Quaker Dictionary because he was remarkable in the 1680s because he refused to discriminate against any employee on the grounds of their religion or their political opinion. And I'm very proud of that.
Absolutely.
And I think I hope there's that little drop of Quaker blood. So I'm Roman Catholic, Anglican.
You're ticking all the boxes.
But I don't think so, because religion is so unfashionable now. And this is one of the problems that, you see, for so many young people, I grew up in a world of certainty. We were certain that the church was right. It's been seen to be fallible, and some aspects of it have been quite terrible. The authoritarianism and the abuse of children, which I deplore. Then politics. We had figures we admired. We had figures left over from the revolutionary period. Whether you identified with them or not, they were figures of world stature. Then we had the legal profession. We've had problems about that as well. Almost everything. The banks. I mean, people would say
jobs
it's as safe as a bank.
Futures, you know, staying in the same job all your life, all those things have changed out of recognition.
There is very little security. And that's why I think you have to get the security from inside yourself, from your own values. And one of the things I would propose to do as president is to take each one of the 26 counties and for 1 month, for the first 26 months, visit that county, fly the flag of that county proudly beside the tricolour in Arsenal Throne, and listen to their leaders, hear the stories of success and of failure, celebrate the success, and do my best to use my lateral thinking to suggest ways round the failures. But then, of course, the great thing would be 1916, the commemoration, 2016, from my Southern Unionist background, to stand there and read the proclamation addressed equally in an age when women were marginalised to Irish men and Irish women, and those wonderful thrilling words to cherish all the children of the nation equally, and perhaps the government might be induced to invite the President of America with their foundation document, the President of France, Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité, and the three of us to join together and say, let us move on and now cherish all the children of the planet equally.
You're the only candidate who could possibly bring that vision to the table. There's no question. There's so much more I wanted to ask you, but I'm afraid we're running out of time. What can I say? If this doesn't work out for you, if we don't get elected, how will you spend next Christmas? How do you spend Christmas?
Well, I'll spend Christmas with my friends, my family. I'll go to St. Patrick's Cathedral for the wonderful Christmas carol service. Before that, I go to Frere Jacques for a meal with family and friends. And I will continue my work on behalf of the excluded, again on the back benches of the Senate. But I will be able to identify even more with the financially threatened, because
this won't be an experience you'd regret.
Not at all. Non, je ne regrette rien, as Edith Piaf sang. But because of all this campaign in the media against me, in which I was specifically and clearly targeted, and a lot of untrue things were said, it's been virtually impossible to fundraise. So I've borne the cost of this largely and almost entirely myself.
Okay. So
that means all my savings are cleaned out. I've borrowed money. So I'll be in a position at Christmas of starting the repayments. Right. So I'll be the same as everybody else. And that's no bad thing.
No.
I will once again be feeling the financial pressure. But one thing is this: my house is safe. And I feel for so many people.
So many people can't say that.
And I wish the government had taken up my suggestion several years ago that just as George Bush started what he called Homeland Security, we should start a section of government under a minister, which I suggested should be called the Department of Home Security, to show that people should not lose their homes. Not very far from my home in the North Inner City, I witnessed an eviction.
Really?
In the last couple of weeks. I never thought in this country,
like
after our revolution, we would ever see evictions again.
Senator Norris, sadly, I'm afraid we're out of time.
Thank you very much, Thomas.
You shall be returning to the fray now, where you'll be addressing the issues for the next 2 weeks.
Yes.
And the very best of luck with it. And thank you very much for coming in. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you very much indeed.